It's not just the tragic death of one baby. We're talking about tens of thousands of women and children who've been kept by the Islamic State for the last battle, used as human shields, only allowed out when they really can't look after them in any way anymore. They're streaming out, malnourished, terrified, in shock. Shamima Begum was one of those women, and the baby she gave birth to, well, she was probably already malnourished herself. She probably had, it's not clear how much chance she would have had of keeping that baby alive. As far as I'm aware, none of the Western nations have taken their citizens out of those camps. It's not clear how long that would take. What is clear is that it's the Kurds who are doing the bulk of the fighting, are also doing the bulk of the caring for all of these women and children, and they need help. Every day, more arrive from the Islamic State's last enclave. Pregnant women, malnourished babies, the wounded, those in shock and pain. The Red Crescent provides first aid and an ambulance so they can be admitted to the National Hospital at Hasaka. This group have come straight from the battlefront in Baghouz. Others arrive after falling sick in the camps. Syrians and foreigners alike are admitted with no questions. Last month, a British woman was brought here as she went into labour. The hospital staff told me that, like most births from the camps, it was premature. This is the hospital where Shamima Begum gave birth 21 days ago. It was a premature birth, but the baby was all right when he left the hospital. So it must have been the conditions in the camp, all the problems that she had there that caused him to get pneumonia. Here in this hospital, they're totally overwhelmed. Since the beginning of March, they've had 500 cases, mainly children with malnutrition, women coming in, giving birth in the most difficult circumstances. A 9-month-old baby, listless and sick. A mother who may also be malnourished.
Admission yesterday as malnutrition.
Malnutrition?
And gastroenteritis.
Shamima Begum's newborn was one of many struggling to survive. Mothers and babies have been living in appalling conditions as they flee from town to town. This 21-month-old girl has diarrhea and dehydration. She needs oral rehydration salts and antibiotics. The doctors here are desperate.
We need everything. We need help, we need medications, we need device, we need so other doctors help us.
More doctors?
More doctors.
You need more medical staff?
No, more medical staff because doctors here not enough in this area.
At least this baby looks healthy, but his mother is mistrustful of infidels. Not just the camera crew, but the Kurdish medical staff, who have to gain the confidence of women who've been brainwashed by ISIS leaders. After her baby Jara was born, Shamima Begum knew he was in danger and wanted to get him to the UK. Her 2 previous babies had died of malnutrition while she lived under ISIS.
Because I don't support ISIS. It's not just because I don't want to starve and I don't want my son to die. It's because I don't support ISIS anymore and what they believe in.
On Tuesday, we filmed at Al-Hol camp, where she and the baby were living at first. Another 12,000 women and children have arrived since our visit, and aid agencies say the camp, now housing 65,000, is at breaking point. This woman told me that she was trying to get help for a sick elderly relative, but the camp authorities were unresponsive. Another said that she and her sister were trying to earn money by selling sweets so they could feed their children, but they couldn't get permission. The women blame the Kurds who run the camp, but that's unfair. No one knew that so many families had remained with ISIS in Baghouz. Our attention may be focused on the death of one baby, but there have been at least 100 others, and without a rapid injection of more aid, there will be many more. We understand from sources near Baghouz that at least 1,000 women and children, and possibly many more, are still there, living in tunnels and under tarpaulins. And there was supposed to be a final assault. This is supposed to be the last battle. But of course, as long as those civilians are there, it's very difficult to do that because they will undoubtedly become casualties. Now, all the Western governments are grappling with this issue about what to do with their citizens who came here and chose to join the Islamic State. But for the Kurds, it's what are we supposed to do? Because as long as those people are left here, many of them are radical, they could be a danger if they're let out of the camps, and in the meantime they're just desperate for more aid to stop more babies dying.
Thanks, Lindsay. Well, earlier I spoke to Paul Donohoe from the International Rescue Committee, who joined us from Beirut, and I began by asking him if the conditions in the camps were endangering children.
No, actually what the problem is that many of the children are dying on the journey to Al-Hol camp or soon after arriving, and that reflects their very poor health conditions in Baghouz, which is the final ISIS-controlled area of eastern Syria. These children and the women have gone for many weeks and months without any health care, and by the time they get to Al-Hol, many are severely malnourished. In addition, we have a lot of very vulnerable women arrive, either heavily pregnant or just about to give birth, and they're arriving on the backs of trucks, and we've even had many cases of women going into labour on those trucks. So the situation that we're finding ourselves in is that Al-Hol camp, no one anticipated that there'd be just so many women and girls in Baghouz. And so when we have 12,000 arrive in just a couple of days, 55,000 arriving over the last few weeks, it's just an overwhelming situation.
These are massive numbers, but are any of the children actually dying in the camp, or are they mostly dying on the way to the camp?
So the vast majority of the cases, they're either dying en route or they're dying very shortly after arriving. And as I mentioned, that reflects the reality of their poor health in Baghouz. We're having hundreds of children arrive with severe diarrhea, which can be life-threatening. Many have gone for days without enough food. We know that that's also causing vomiting. In addition, we have lots of people arrive with a very disfiguring skin disease. So it's a very difficult place, a difficult time for all these children arriving.
And is there a process of getting in touch with the governments or the authorities or consular services and embassies of the various European countries that some of these mothers are from and their children?
So we were not active in the area where the foreign women are currently staying in Al-Hol camp. I've seen the reports of different embassies saying that only if women are able to make it to their consulates will they be dealt with. What we do know is that when there are unaccompanied or separated children, then family tracing does attempt to occur, and that's one of the things that we're also seeing was part of this crisis. More than 240 children have arrived at Al-Hol camp unaccompanied or separated from their parents. They've either been separated on the journey or because their parents have died previously, then they're now arriving alone.
Let me ask you finally, and bluntly if I may, do you think that if Shamima Begum, the mother of Jara, had not been stripped of her British citizenship, that the conditions would have been different and the baby boy might still be alive today?
We don't actually have insights onto the situation that she currently finds herself. She's not in Al-Hol camps right now. So even though baby Jara was born there, she was moved, it was reported that she was moved to another camp, which isn't seeing such an overwhelming number of arrivals. She did, we have been told, or I've read in the news, that she did go to the hospital, but unfortunately the baby Jara died. It's really to emphasise that these young mothers have had no medical care, no antenatal care. There are always complications in pregnancies. They're a very vulnerable group. Newborn babies in particular are very vulnerable. And being born into a displacement camp in North East Syria is obviously not an ideal situation.
Paul Donohoe, thank you very much indeed.